guys. Okay, so it's Will. I'm back here for Music Protests and doing another live stream here. We're going to be looking at the Chop and Swing sound pack from Ableton, right? So basically what I'm looking to do is create this series of streams where I go through all of the different live packs that I have. I now have Ableton 11 Suite, all these sound packs. I'd love to be able to use them, love to be able to do cooler stuff with them. But, you know, I need to investigate them, hoping that that's kind of why you're here. So I've got my computer here. I've got an overhead of my push. And then what we're going to do is start off by looking at the Ableton page, all about this. All right. And let's just go on over there. And I've got this browser page open to the Chop and Swing. This is just Ableton's website, right? And so what is this sound pack for? This right here, right, like over here, these tags, I think are kind of a good place to start when it comes to figuring out the vibe. So hip hop, drums, loops, synth, R&B. Let's listen to some of the samples or some of the demos here. So kind of like a mellow vibe. There's a lot of kind of there's a lot of like slight noise in these, like the kind of noise you get from like older recordings. We have like analog noise that comes from electromagnetic interference, that sort of thing. Like there's that, it's slightly saturated. It's kind of like high gain. So I think that places it in like a date range. I would think of this pack, Chop and Swing, being good for creating tracks where you want to give it like maybe a slightly more dated. It's not ultra, it's not going to be modern at all, except where you want something that's modern retro, you know, like you want to make it obviously retro. Then Chop and Swing's, all of their demos so far, well, this is one exception. So a lot cleaner, like a slight sort of disco sound there in the drums. Started out with this pretty clean, I mean, analog sounding synth. So even though it was a lot cleaner synth sounds, still kind of analog. I feel like, you know, this would be really good for maybe a theme that's looking for retro, musical themes that are looking for retro sounds, and the technologies and the ways of making music that go with those sounds, right? So you might like thinking back to early hip hop, where people are actually working with turntables, actually working with like sampling physically on physical objects, and the noise you're going to get from a turntable, from a record, as opposed to, you know, having super modern clean samples in a digital environment, all the way up to, you know, like 80s, where you have the introduction of samplers, but those samplers are like really short memory samples, so the samples are really small. Often, you know, they are actually recorded with a mic, so they're not, and they're kind of like sampled and resampled and resampled, so you get this like additional noise every time. So making a track that wanted to sound retro from like 70s, early 80s, I feel like that's what Chop and Swing would be really good at. I'd imagine, since they're calling it Chop and Swing, that swing is the vibe. It's a rhythmic principle that leans heavily on triplets, and it's kind of dated to like jazz, Motown, R&B, more vibe, more oriented around those vibes. Chop part, I think, is that this pack is made up of a lot of samples that are intended to be chopped up. So this isn't like so much a drag and drop pack. And they talk about that style that made sampling an art form. That's probably the kind of track you want to make here. So when we move forward here, we're going to do some chopping. We're going to break up some of these samples, reconstruct some music, and do three things. Now that we've figured out, first thing is what's the vibe, and I'll come back over here to my other scene here. Let me see. I guess I want to go to, well, I'll just leave it on this computer screen. So the three things are, what's the vibe? And then how do we make music with it? We'll chop up some samples, and I'll demonstrate that on the push. I'll show you my workflow. And then also, how can we perform with it, right? Because Ableton Live is a performance tool, really, and push is a performance tool. So we want to figure out how we can use chop and swing in performance, not just to make music kind of in the lab. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my push here, and we will load up some samples. So let's start by, well, actually, let me just give you a little precursor into loading samples on the push, because in the desktop environment, in the software, you can just click, drag, and drop. Sometimes if you are in the push and you go to just browse, right, and you add, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Go down to your packs, you go to chop and swing. This is like intuitive to do. Like you got your track, you scroll down, you find a sample, and I'm just going to pick a sample kind of at random. Okay, so, and you load that. Okay, so what have I done? Well, I've created a simpler. But that's not really what I wanted. Like, I just wanted to load the sample into not a playable. I'm not ready to play this yet, and I don't want each pad to just play that sample. So workflow wise, you have to figure out, okay, I want this to be first just an audio clip that I can mess around with. So what you want to do is make sure you're on an audio track. You have to be on an audio track and go into the clip kind of mode, right? If you're not in the clip mode, then you're not going to get the desired result. Once you go into clip mode, you'll see it says press browse to load a sample. Now if you go to browse, go down to packs, you'll notice that now the only option I have are samples, right? I can go to, I'm going to just get a music loop here, say keys loop. All right. Ooh, I like that. All right, let's go with this one. Okay, so now I'm loading that, but what I've done is I've loaded it into a clip. Like if I go to my session view, I can see the clip there, right? Now it's in my scenes. From here, this is like my preferred workflow when I'm chopping up samples, because now I can use this awesome, beautiful display on my push. I'm not interfacing really with the software at all. The software is doing all this in the background, but what I'm thinking about here is my samples, and I can see it here. You know, I can manipulate it. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to see, let's see, if we gain it up, you can really clearly see how there's like 4 distinct attacks here. So I'm going to go back to the note view. All right, and I am going to start by changing this sample into a simpler. So I've got my sample loaded in here, and I can just see it. I'm looking at a clip, right? This is an actual clip. And if we were to go over to Ableton, let's just take a look at that. So I've got this clip here, and you see the form that I'm seeing in my push right here. from here, I want to convert this to a simpler. So I'm going to hit the convert button, simpler, and it's created a new track for me over here. Okay, so now I can see in my session I've got like this record enabled. I'm going to go hold record, disable that, and I'm just going to actually delete that whole track. I don't need that anymore. Now I've got this simpler. It's a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to switch my mode to slicing, and I'm going to turn slice by to manual. So there's no slices right now. I'm going to create my first slice right here. So right now I've got an instrument. Oops, actually, I'm sorry. That didn't work out right. So I've got this audio sample which I converted to a simpler, and on this track, think of the, even though they're not lit up, think of these bottom 16 here as markers, right, for my slice mode. So as I play this, right, this is like the default is like my first pad. But when I get over here to the others of these four kind of attacks, these transients here, I'm going to create a new slice just by tapping the tab, a pad here. So like this, like this. Okay, and I'm also going to go in here. So now I've got there's another one in there. So it's now I've turned this sample into an actual instrument. And if I go to convert and I turn this into a drum rack, the nice thing here is I can do the sequencing, right? So first, you're in the clip mode, you load an audio sample so you can see it and you can play it. Then you convert that into a simpler so you can slice it up, and you can set the samples with, or set the slices with the push. Then you convert it to a drum rack. And the reason for this is that you want to be able to now sequence it using the push. So now I've got my pads here. I'm in the note view, and I can just grab this. I'm going to turn on my tempo, or a metronome. So now I've got this sequenced. It's all in time. I don't have to quantize anything because I punched it in here. And if we switch over to the desktop, then what you see over here is that I've got this drum rack, right? It's all set up with my slices. And I've got this MIDI down here, which represents the sequence that I created on the push. All right, so let's go ahead and find another sample, because I like that groove. Let's find something else, hopefully in this key. I'm going to go back to an audio track, just any audio track. If you didn't have one set up, then you can just add a track here. Go into clip view again, of course, browse, go down to my packs, go to chop and swing. And then go musically. Let's find some synth loops. See if there's something. I think that last one was an A minor, so I'm gonna see if there's anything here. I don't see anything in A minor. I'm gonna look for something in A minor or C, just so that, you know, it kind of all fits together. Oh, there's an A minor. Okay, so I've got my audio clip, right, set up. Now I'm going to convert that into a simpler. Then I'm going to change my mode to slicing, change slice by to manual, and then alright, so that's pretty basic, right? I'm going to turn that off. Now I'm going to zoom in. I don't need all of those samples. In fact, I probably don't even need these two, so I'll go ahead and delete these two. So I've got, and I'm going to zoom in just onto these so that I can really see the attack well. And whichever one I tap, the start line, that's what nudge is going to control. So I'm going to I don't want playback to change. So now I've got, I can even nudge this. What I'm trying to get here is a nice attack on each one of these notes. So it becomes playable, you know? Ooh, I like that. Reaching for the wrong knob. All right, so now I've got. All right, so now I'm going to convert this into a drum rack so I can sequence it, right? I'm going to go ahead and just solo this track. All right, pretty simple. Now if I undo the solo, go to the mix. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up a drum loop. Now here, I don't actually necessarily want to have this drum loop chopped up and converted into simplers and converted into drum racks. I'm just going to take a drum loop. I could do that. I could do the same thing if I wanted to. But here, what I'm going to do is get rid of some tracks that I'm not using. So guitar. This is my drum rack, so that's my clip. I don't want that one. That's just the audio clip. All right, so I've got basically two drum racks. I've got the keys, and I got the guitar. So what I want, actually, I think what I did accidentally. I actually changed the playthrough mode on these, which is kind of not getting exactly the sound that I wanted. But I don't really want to get sidetracked on that, so well, let me see here. Yeah, because I'd have to go back into the simpler before I turned it into the drum rack, and that's kind of going to disturb the workflow here. So since this is really about demonstration, let's pull up. I'm going to create a new track. So go and add a new track, an audio track, just a default clip, so that I can browse for a sample. Go down to packs, chop and swing, pull together a drum loop. Let's see, let's go with the percussion loop. Let's go with that. See how that sounds together. All right, so what I've got here now are I'm going to go ahead and I can also look at the clip here if I want to see what exactly is going on in my MIDI. So, and I can actually like zoom in on that if I wanted to nudge it or something. So back this off a little bit. I'm going to actually go back and redo that. So I'm going to go, I want to get a new vibe going on, something that's a lot better of a vibe. So actually let me play, whoops, I got rid of the wrong thing here. So I'm going to get rid of my guitar instrument totally. Right, so I've got this. I'm going to go into my keys. Okay, so what I like is this idea. Making a two bar loop. All right, there we go. Just a simple 2-bar loop. And we can see the whole MIDI clip here consisting of just 3 MIDI notes, right? Playing back these samples. Let me go get my guitar. So I'm going to go ahead and add an audio track again. Go down to pack, actually, sorry, getting ahead of myself. Audio track, load the default track, go to clip, then to browse, down to packs, chop and swing. And I think what I had gotten was a guitar loop, and there was one in A minor that I liked. That was it. Okay, so now I'm going to convert this to a simpler, change my mode to slicing, slice by to manual. Just giving myself like say four pads to begin with, and I'm going to go zoom into these and just set the nudge. Then I'm going to convert this to a drum rack. Then play. There you go. So now I've got this basic 3-part. I can get rid of the original audio track that holds that clip. All right, so that's how you could build music with this, and you're kind of getting that same sense that probably I'm getting, which is, let me switch actually to my overhead here so you can see the push. You're getting the same sense that I'm getting, which is like this is kind of like a dated late 60s, 70s, early 80s vibe, almost like music I'd imagine being in like Magnum PI or like some 70s TV show. Y50 or something. So how can we perform with this? Like how, let's say that I put this together and it was just awesome track and I do want to perform it. What do I do? Well, chop and swing, let's go back to the browser or the computer here and look at the chop and swing page, because down here they talk about what's included in this pack. So there's 100+ instrumental racks, 24 drum racks, audio loops and chords, MIDI clips, and 11 effects racks. So generally what I'll be looking at is these effect racks. If there's effect racks, those are going to be the performable elements, right? So let's go back here to the overhead and look at some of these, see the okay, so audio effect rack. So I'm going to go with my guitar here, right? Solo that. And I'm going to add a device. This time I'm going to go to packs and down to chop and swing. Effect racks, right? And you can't really get previews on these, so I'm going to just pick one. I'm going to say Beat Shaper. See what that sounds like. Okay. So that's pretty aggressive. So on something that's already, I'm going to undo that, but I am going to put that on my keys, because I'll tell you what I'm thinking is that on my keys, there's these very static notes, right? So having some kind of rhythmic interest could be cool. So I'm going to put it there instead of guitar, where I already had a lot of rhythmic interest. So I'm packs, and I'm going down chop and swing, and I'm going to effect racks, and I'm going to and the beat shaper again. All right, so change my beat grid, maybe to something cool like triplets. Triplets are going to kind of like convert a bit closer to a swing vibe, which is going to go with the chop and swing, right? I don't really like, there's this LFO in there, which I'm not really digging. It's too distracting. Bring down the resonance. So let's find maybe an instrument rack for my drums. Oops. So packs, effect racks. I'm gonna go for distortion and see, making it. All right, so this is like it's sort of doing some tube saturation, some warmth, which goes very much with like sort of dated analog vibe. Okay, so I've got that effects rack that's working on the piano, on the keyboards. No effects right now on the guitar. And I could go to my master track too, and here I could add a device. I go to packs, because I noticed there was in here mixing and mastering. Kit puncher, pressure generator, open slump. Sounds interesting. I'm not really digging whatever that's doing, so I'm going to just delete that device on the master there. But basically, the idea here is instrument racks, good for making music in a pack where that's what you're getting is mostly instrument racks. This pack seems to be oriented mostly around sampling, so you want to chop up the samples and build your melodies, your harmonies, your grooves out of that, and then out of those samples. Then in terms of performability, if you'd use some of the instrument racks, then you could perform with the macros in those instrument racks, or you can use the audio effects racks on top of whatever you've sampled, these drum racks and simplers that you've created, and make it performable that way. Okay, so that's it for Chop and Swing, and thanks a lot for joining me, and I look forward to the next one. We're going to just be keep moving through these. I'm going to be doing them Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Keep moving through these packs. If you have requests or anything, shout out, let me know, and I'll check out whatever you guys want to hear.